Every entrepreneur has a story they don't like talking about. The business that didn't work, the opportunity they missed, or the season where they questioned everything. Today's conversation isn't about success. It's about what happens after failure. Because sometimes the greatest thing you'll ever build isn't a business, it's your character. Today, I've got Daniel Batista on the Level Up Live podcast, and we're going to pull back the layers. This is going to be one that you'll want to listen to all the way to the end. Daniel, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you very much. What an intro.
Absolutely, man. So before we dive into business, who is Daniel Batista? Who are you growing up, and what shaped you into the man sitting across from me today in the podcast studio?
Man, that's a very good question. I think over the past few years, I've experienced all kinds of things, both in business and personal. Let's go back a little bit. Let's start with high school. I remember my senior year of high school. I see all my friends around me. Basically, everybody has a plan already. They know what they want to do in college. Most of them have parents that they can just talk to you about, hey, what you do in college, things like this. In my case, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I had a feeling that business was the way that I wanted to focus on, and I considered going to college for it. But at some point along the way, I just figured, you know what? Why don't I just take a year off and I try this myself? I'll just go out to the world and see what's out there. And long story short, I started trying all these kinds of things: pressure washing, lawn care, moving services, and little by little, I started to, let's just say, find my niche. Maybe something that I could focus on and develop as much as possible. And little by little, I found that with the moving company. At 19 years old, I started telling guys around my age, hey, do you want to make a little bit of money on the weekends? And over the years, I just started to grow into an actual business. I bought trucks, I hired people, I had an office staff, and then challenges started to arise. Just like you go up, sometimes you go down, and let's just say it went very well for most of the time, but it didn't end the way that I wanted it to be. And now I'm kind of just accepting that and looking forward to what's coming next.
I mean, that's beautiful. And we can dive off into that as we get into this episode. But I appreciate you sharing that story. It's a powerful one and one that everybody needs to hear. And I think so many people resonate with that story of starting something, and what goes up must come down. And it's not what I've learned in entrepreneurship is it's not how you are when the times are going good, because anybody could run a business or run their own life when things are going really, really well. It's ultimately when you get knocked down, do you get back up, and how do you react in those moments? And I love that you shared that. So I appreciate you opening up with that. I'm curious, where did the dream of owning your own business? You've kind of said you wanted to go off on your own journey after high school, and then you just did one thing after another and in your entrepreneur journey. So where did the dream of owning your own business come from? And what excited you most about owning your own business?
I think it all started with my parents. They both went to college, but they didn't finish. What I saw as a kid was how they had their own business and they had multiple locations, and I would spend most of the day with them. After school, they would take me with them, and I would just watch how they did things on their own. And over the years, I saw their growth. As a kid, I saw them work really hard, but at the same time, I could see the rewards of their work. We would go on vacations. We would have the greatest gifts for Christmas and birthday parties, and I would also have the opportunity to see them give to the less fortunate. There was this thing that they would do every 6 months where they would go to adoption center, and I would go with them, and they would just give out toys and clothes and food to the kids that were there, and they would always tell me, don't ever forget that you are a privileged kid. You have two parents, you have health, you have a sister, you have a family. And that privilege comes with the responsibility of helping those that didn't get that privilege. And, seeing that as a kid, it always showed me kind of the way that I wanted to go as well. And I just saw how business gives you that opportunity.
So every entrepreneur has a season where they question everything. And I love how you shared getting into the entrepreneurship and having somebody that you could model, which is what your parents in this case, and seeing what that opportunity, yes, they did work hard. Yes, they put the sweat equity into it, time, energy, and effort. And they paid it forward. They built that bridge and that gap and that ladder for the people that they could take with them. And it was caught, not taught. However, was there a season, and you had kind of tapped into it earlier, where you questioned everything? And did you have one of those moments where you can recollect and go back and dive deeper on?
Yes, 100%. Summer of 2023, I hit the peak of my business. For the first 6 months of the year, I had put a plan together to save as much money as possible. My goal was to buy 2 trucks, since we were growing to that level, and we needed that extra capacity. And for the first time in my life, I mean, I had never seen $50,000 in my account. So that was very exciting. But at the same time, I noticed that one of my biggest issues in business and in life has never been to be behind on things. I've always wanted to be ahead. So let's just say that I wanted to skip years of work and years of building systems and processes and teams to be able to handle what would come from buying these 2 trucks. And I didn't plan for that. Essentially, I got very excited. I wanted to get ahead. I bought the trucks. I skipped doing inspections on them. I skipped bringing a mechanic to check them out. I skipped reading the contract that I was getting myself into. And let's just say I bought 2 trucks that looked good on the outside, but were terrible on the inside. And to this day, I still regret that decision. It was one of those moments where I questioned, everything I thought I knew. And I think that was the point of almost no return, because I had put so much time, effort, money into this, and I had no way out. I looked for ways around it. I even considered like going to attorneys, considering the state of the trucks that I had bought, and I think I almost never recovered for that. So I would say that's the main point that kind of just changed everything for me.
What did that season of life feel like for you, Daniel?
Man, it was humbling. Even though that I remember that time with a lot of like stress and maybe even suffering a little bit, because I thought I knew everything. At the same time, it was like a big lesson to like realize that I still had so much more to learn. And looking back, I am more grateful than anything that it happened, because the way that things were going, I could have turned into something I didn't want to be. And I think it's something I shared with you on my first meeting, or maybe it was with somebody else, but there's a saying I heard recently that I really like, which is, if God destroys your plans, it's because your plans could have destroyed you. So just take that and move forward.
It's a great perspective, man. And one that at your age to understand that perspective and the things that you've said is very commendable, is very admirable. And obviously you've put in the work and you've reflected. And that's been the key. That's the key ingredient. And I would hold on to that, because we all make mistakes. I think everybody listening to this can resonate with that. And it is relatable. And in some it's been minor things, and some it's been major things. But at the end of the day, we're humans. We make mistakes. And what I'm hearing you say is you've owned those mistakes, you've reflected on those mistakes, and now you know what to do and what not to do moving forward. And that's, man, if you can be the one that continues to move forward and learn from that, what's next, because you've already experienced the up and the down. Well, now it's time to build on that. And I think you've just getting to know you the last couple months by you showing up, showing out, and leaning in and sharing and opening up and having a safe place. man, that is all an ingredient to becoming a stronger 10.0 version of yourself. And just honored that you shared that, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the opportunity to speak up.
When the business didn't work out, did you ever, I'm just curious, did you ever feel like your identity disappeared with it?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I would say out of all the things that I've experienced in my young life, which I know I still have so much more to see and live through, but I think the hardest challenge that I've had to endure is the months that came after selling the business. You know, it's almost like I didn't know what to do next. So yeah, definitely biggest challenge of my life, and I'm glad that I was able to get past that. But every now and then it'll still come up where like, man, I had something good. How how did this happen? You know, even though I try to remember and remind myself as many times as I can that everything happens for a reason, sometimes you just start to wonder, well, what is that reason? Because I'm not sure if I understand it. So yeah.
Would you be comfortable in telling a little bit more about, just for the conversational piece, on what happened? And again, don't feel free, don't feel
Yeah, no.
obligated to disclose, but just for context on what happened.
Yeah, I don't think anything happened overnight. It was more of a accumulation of things over time. I think success is a battle for territory that you got to fight every day. And let's just say there were a lot of days I didn't go out to fight, and trucks needed their due maintenance in certain occasions that I didn't pay attention to. I thought we could push the limit, maybe get a little bit more profit out of them before spending any money on the very expensive things that we needed to do very often. I had some guys that I thought had a lot of potential, and they only stayed at having a lot of potential. They never really reached it. And I made the mistake of just thinking, well, I don't want to fire them and then have to start from zero with somebody else. Yeah, they have some bad things, but they also have some good things. And I stayed at that internal battle for years, up until the point where some of those individuals made decisions that had a very permanent, let's just say, permanent harm to the company. You know,
Yeah.
we had this one job that went terribly bad, that escalated to being sued, and it was either somehow get through that and have like almost no business left, or kind of just sell for what it was worth at the time, and kind of let's just come to a settlement and not have to worry about turned it what it could have turned out into.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can't say, oh, this thing just happened to me one day and then everything came after. I think I just didn't see where we were going ahead of time, and I paid for that. I think as a business owner, it's not just making good decisions for now, but also for later. And I didn't make those decisions for later.
And looking back, what did that season give you, Daniel, that success never could have? Because you could have continued that trajectory up, and we could be on this podcast today and you continue that trajectory up. And everything happens for a reason. So looking back, what did that season give you that success could have?
I think I've had to learn one way or another to just be patient. Some things, they can be meant for you, but you just gotta give them time. Everything comes at the right time, at the right place. And if you try to force them, sometimes you could just end up losing it. I think I had something good going, but I wanted to force it to be quicker. And that's always something that I've had to work on. I want things to be quick, to be fast. I don't want to wait. What why wait a week when I could just have it now? And I would always try to skip things. And I think I paid a big price for that. So after everything that happened, I've learned to be where my feet are. And what that means for me is I'm here talking to you. I'm fully focused on this. My phone is on another room. Everything's silenced. I want to be here. In the past, I would be talking to people and I would just be thinking, what's next? What's next? I would be working on something and I'm not even there. I'm just trying to think of, hey, this thing I wanted for next year, how can I get it next month? And that's how I was. I would go out with my wife for dinner and I wouldn't really be there. She would talk to me and things would just be noise. And so after everything that happened, I've learned to be present and to understand that things take time. Good things take time.
Very powerful. Now, you had mentioned your wife through this entire process. How long you been married, Daniel?
2 years we've been married, 6 years we've been together.
Okay. What would you say marriage has taught you about leadership that business never could?
Man, that's a good one. One of the main things I've learned is to have sympathy for others. One of the biggest challenges that I've had is understanding how, we're not all equipped with the same skills. And sometimes you just have to be there for someone. And having this is something that I've had to work a lot on. It's kind of like a pattern that I've seen repeat with my mom, my sister, and my wife, where in the past I would lose my patience. You know, I couldn't understand how they didn't see what I saw. And one of the main things that I always struggle with is that, my mom, my sister, or my wife would come to me with a problem and I would instantly think of a solution and I would just say, hey, let's just do this. And I think we've all heard this before. But it turned out that they didn't want a solution at the moment. They just wanted it to be listened,
Mm,
understood.
mm.
And that's something that I think I finally have started to internalize and make it a part of myself, which is that we don't we don't have to rush to things. We don't have to instantly fix things. Sometimes we can just sit, listen, understand, and then we can open the way for solutions to come. And again, it's just that quickness to things, always wanted to be ahead, always wanted to jump into things that I've started to work on and both marriage and business have taught me one way or another.
Man, I could just sit here and listen to you for hours. You've got such a great story and where you're at, man. And I feel like you're just getting warmed up, Daniel. You're wise beyond your years, brother. And I know you've probably heard that before, but that's everything that you've been through. I believe it ultimately comes down to Maxwell talks about this failing forward. All of our failures, all of our mistakes is just making us stronger by reflecting in who we're becoming. So I'm just smiling ear to ear. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm smiling ear to ear. Just honored to be on this show with you, man.
I appreciate it, man.
If you could sit down with the version of yourself the day your business failed, what would you tell him?
Man, so many things I would like to say. I think something that I've learned recently that I didn't have before is to have rules over willpower. Many times during my business career, I relied on willpower, just hoping that I would wake up with all the energy and motivation in the world needed to do the things I had planned to do. And most days I didn't have that willpower, at least not on the, let's just say, second half of my business. When I first started it, every day I felt like $1,000,000. I could just go out, do all the things and have leftover energy. But once I hit a certain level that I was hoping for, I kind of just became complacent. I didn't really have that willpower anymore. And I also didn't have the rules to keep me going. So essentially, I just stayed stagnant for so long that things just naturally came down, I think. Now, after all this, if I only had a chance to say one thing, rules over willpower, for sure. And something I'm still working on, but I can tell you that I am much better at. I right here in front of me, I have a board that only has a few things, but the main thing that I have is respect my calendar, respect my sleep, rules over willpower. That's it. I used to give myself all these motivation quotes and things that are okay. They're great, but they didn't really stick with me. And I've decided to just do a few things well and make sure that I stick to it, that I'm consistent, rather than having a good day here, a good day there. And like I said, I'm still working on this, but I feel like I'm on the right path, and I'm just trying to stay consistent with it.
Brick
Give me a
by
second. I
brick.
need to Give me a second to just silence myself a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
I
wrapping
got
up,
my
man.
ducks in the back.
Daniel, yeah, I'm wrapping up, brother.
Okay,
Thanks
cool.
so much for man, just sharing your heart and being willing to have an honest conversation today. I told you that when you're having fun, time flies, and today's time has flown. But man, to everyone listening, my question to you is what season have you been calling a failure that might actually be preparing you for your next chapter? And if you're looking for a room where entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners challenge and encourage you, we'd love to have you join us as a guest at Level Up and Live. Appreciate you guys being here. Keep leveling up. Daniel, thanks again, brother.
Thanks, man.